two-year anniversary conference of StopFake.org, a fact-checking website that focuses on how to combat Russian propaganda. With me now is Marcel van Herpen, a Dutch security analyst, and we'll talk more about combating Kremlin's propaganda, not only in Russia, but also in the European Union. Mr. van Herpen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start off with Putin's propaganda, not only in Russia, but in the EU, but also in North America. Have you seen a rise of it, and what would you say is the most prevalent thing that is happening right now?
I think if you look now, well, you have the well-known thing is RT TV. But another thing that's very interesting and nobody talks about it is another project by the Rossiyskaya Gazeta, Russia Beyond the Headlines, and it's selling Russian information with quality papers in Europe and the United States. And every month one of these papers with the title Russia Now, La Russie aujourd'hui in France, is distributed. And the Rossiyskaya Gazeta, what is the official Kremlin paper, is paying for that. It's very interesting that this paper has a rather liberal image. They are talking about cuisine, about museums, about etc. And also interviews with friends of Khodorkovsky. So people think, well, this is very, liberal Western news. It is not. It is a very intelligent way of influencing Western audiences. This paper is, every month it appears in Italy with Repubblica. It's in El País in Spain, in France with Le Figaro, the Süddeutsche Zeitung in Germany. So this is a whole very expensive project. And what's interesting today is that I saw that China is now starting to copy this project because it's very, very effective.
So would you say it's almost a tricky or a sneaky way to push propaganda onto the public, looking at, general headlines and cuisine and arts and culture?
Exactly. And also, let's say these papers are sold with quality papers. That means you have to influence the opinion leaders in these countries in the West, and via the opinion leaders, the news is trickling down to the general population. So I think it's a very clever, thought-out strategy. And, yeah.
So it's not just the television, but it's also now the newspapers.
Yeah.
Would you say that people are more susceptible to propaganda when they see it in a pretty cover, so to speak?
Yes, I think so. Because, well, you can watch RT and then you have the information on Syria, on Ukraine, etc. But that's it. But if it's packaged in a more, let's say, pleasant way with cuisine, with tourism, with sports, etc. There are some political subjects. It's far more difficult to know and to understand that it's propaganda.
You did mention Syria, and I want to touch on that ever so slightly. Russia has been involved in it, and for the longest time, we heard, no, we're not, but then the troops were a part of it. Now the troops exited Syria. Should we pay more of an attention to Russia's role in the Middle East and how it presents itself in the Middle East? Because it's not only the European Union, it's not only the North America, but it's also the Middle East that a lot of people seem to ignore, but there's a lot of media there as well.
Yeah, well, I've always said that the move in Syria by Russia is a sideshow. The real show is what's going on in Ukraine. And now the Baltic states are at the moment, because there's a lot of talk inside NATO how to defend the Baltic states. There's a lot of talk about the so-called Suwalki gap, the gap between Belarus and Kaliningrad, how to defend this small strip in the northern part of Europe. So I think Putin is coming back to Europe now, and his attention is now back to Ukraine and back to the Baltics.
In terms of security, and I know you're from the Netherlands, and we know the referendum is coming up, and there's been a lot of talk about vote yes, vote no. What is your take on that? And not to say who's behind it, but also to ask, who's going to profit from it, whether it's going to be the Dutch people, the Ukrainians, or the Russians?
Well, what is clear is in fact that the Russians are very interested, the Kremlin is interested in the outcome, because a no vote would be a big propaganda success, because the Kremlin can say, you see, Ukraine, even the Netherlands, EU member state doesn't want you. And this is, in fact, the impact of the Russian attention for this referendum. In fact, the whole referendum is a non-event. It is, it is about, you need 30% of the votes, and it's only it has no impact. The government can do what it wants afterwards.
So even if
there's a no vote, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
No, so don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. That is the main message.
It's a media event.
It's a media event.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the media, we're a part of mass media, of course. The tremendous influence of Russian propaganda in the Western media have we felt the effects? Have you seen any effects of what Russia has to say? Has it sort of snuck its way into Western world, especially in the European Union?
Yeah, I think in France and also in Germany you see a big impact, I think. So it's Boris Johnson this morning already spoke about 3 million Russian speakers inside Germany who watch the TV, who are susceptible to believe what the Russian television is telling them. And there are huge lobbies in France and in Germany that are in favor of Russia. There's business lobbies, but also ideological lobbies, political parties. You have the Pegida movement in Germany. You have the new party AfD. You have in France the Front National. But you have also a big part of Les Républicains, that's the old UMP party, the centralist party, but a part of it is really pro-Putin, and we should not underestimate it. So I think it's a real problem.
And the main message here is, yes, we shouldn't underestimate it, but what can we do? What can the Ukrainian government do? As a European analyst, as a European security expert, what can you recommend for our government to do to perhaps counteract what Putin is doing?
Well, in my book, Putin's Propaganda Machine, I have in the last chapter, what should we do? We should not have a counter-propaganda. What is done here very well is to debunk Russian propaganda, and we should tell the truth and have a real free media. I think we should continue to have free media, but we should debunk Russian propaganda and not being, let's say, too gentle and too friendly with them.
Mr. Van Herpen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it tremendously. This has been a discussion on ways to combat Russian propaganda, not only in Russia, not only in Europe, but all over the globe. Thank you so much for watching us. I'm Julia Sotska. Now back to the news.